Spam, love it or hate it, you can't deny its versatility. This quick, protein-packed staple has transformed dishes like tacos, burgers, stir-fries, quesadillas, and more into instant family recipes. These are our favorite ways to use Spam that have been forgotten over time. So grab a can and let's get spammin'. Spam scalloped potatoes were actually one of the best comfort foods you could have in the United States during the 20th century. Before we get into why it's not relevant anymore, though, we should probably discuss what Spam really is. A lot of people think it's ham mixed with pineapple, which in some cases is true. It's usually the pork shoulder mixed in with ham and potato starch as a binder, though. Anyway, that makes it good for several reasons, most of which we'll discuss in this list. Spam was known for its contribution to the war effort because it was almost everything you ever wanted from a military-oriented food. It was easy to store, even easier to carry, lasted longer than you needed it to, and it was affordable, so buying in bulk for all your troops was never a problem. The scalloped potato version was basically a cheese sauce-based combo of potatoes and Spam, and this is more useful to the average person than it was to soldiers. It was a way for families to feed themselves on a budget and still have something that resembled a slightly full meal. During those times, that was pretty much a godsend. If you want to talk miracles, though, there was probably nothing that fit that bill better than Spam and green bean stir-fry. See, the thing about this was that it was both new and really convenient. Stir-frying was something that for the longest time had largely just stuck to China, and unlike what we're used to, the closed-off nature of the world at the time didn't really help that. Throughout the 30s and 40s, though, this actually began to change a little. You would see so many Chinese-American restaurants popping up that were becoming cornerstones of Asian-American cuisine and serving as a way for people to try out new flavors and dishes that they weren't used to. Plus, Asian ingredients like spice blends and cooking techniques had become more common. Then you had the convenience of it all, and as you know, we as a nation collectively love what's quick and easy. It's as American as you can get. Spam and green bean stir-fry wasn't just efficient, though. It was affordable, and that really sealed the deal on making this a daily classic of the 20th century. I couldn't really track down the exact start of this, but Spam stuffed bell peppers also used to be an undisputed top dog of the 1900s. The Spam stuffed variant came along a bit later, but stuffed peppers had carved out a place for themselves as some of the only greens Americans would regularly eat. When people finally got around to using Spam almost everywhere and daily, they began to experiment with different ways of eating it. Now, before these ideas rolled out, if you wanted to have meat-stuffed bell peppers, that would be a whole other thing and a much longer one at that. For how good they are, they're pretty tiny, you know? Doesn't feel like good time management if you spend a chunk of your afternoon making them. I mean, hey, some people do, but it doesn't exactly speak of regular lunch material. Luckily, Spam was exactly what people needed to change that. Now you had an easy, accessible, and quick way to get meat fillings sorted out. And, well, emptying out a bell pepper took a few minutes at best. People would mix in cooked rice along with herbs and garlic for some extra flavor, and just to feel fancy. It was actually a lot better than a description can make it sound, to be honest. Those notions of Spam only being in Hawaiian dishes that would have massive amounts of pineapple in them didn't come from nowhere. Recipes like Hawaiian Spam and coconut rice bases or Hawaiian Spam sandwiches were some of the most common ones you could find in and outside of Hawaii. It was a dish that took Spam, as well as lots of coconut rice, and put all of this together in a baked casserole. The casserole itself was just classic American goodness at its core, but it was the coconut rice bake and Hawaiian Spam as the filling for it that really got people passionate, to say the least. Some people took to this pretty well, and they thought it was finally pushing the bounds of what a casserole could be. Not everything has to be savory, you know? On the other hand, a lot of people thought it was messing with tradition and a beloved American dish. The rising trends of fusion food weren't really reassuring people that this wasn't the case either. Still, its time came and went, because now, even inside Hawaii, you can't really find a dish like this anymore. Coconut rice is still a popular thing. Don't get me wrong, but this specific recipe fell out of the conversation a long time ago. Spam deviled eggs were another example of people thinking that clocks that needed no fixing were being messed with for no reason. This was because these deviled eggs involved having fried or browned spam mixed in with the yolk filling, and this was apparently the big unique selling point of the dish. Now, if you ask me, that sounds like a pretty good combination. I mean, seriously, there are worse things you can do to eggs. There are also plenty of better things to argue about, like waffle burgers. Seriously, who came up with that? And why? And how did their doctor never bring it up with them? Anyway, back to spam deviled eggs. So the idea with that yolk filling was pretty much that it would make for some decent contrast. You have your crispy spam, you have your creamy yolk, you get the picture? Then, there was also the fact that this was an exceptionally good and easy source of protein. Plus, and yeah, I know, we're really piling on the pros here, it was also a really good party snack. The kind of thing that could sit and look pretty on a platter and work as food between conversations and bouts of catching up with people. People have moved away from spam a lot though, and deviled eggs found new trends to hang with as time would go on. Spam hash brown casseroles were something that started thanks to a lot of different regional influences. You had inspiration from the Midwest and the South, not just because of the fact that this was another casserole dish, but because of the fact that it was centered around hash browns. See, back in the day, if you wanted to do breakfast right as a working-class man, you'd go to your local diner and order as many hash browns as you could afford that day. Still, there were a few flaws with the dish overall. It wasn't as filling as leftover casserole could be, and it wasn't something that had the potential to be a family meal. How do you end up fixing issues like that? Well, a lot of people thought there was massive potential in mixing the two together thanks to spam. A lot of people seem to unanimously agree that the golden age for casseroles was the 1950s to 1960s, mostly because that was the time after the Second World War when there was a massive trend of using processed stuff like spam due to how convenient it was. It helped to spice up your comfort food, as you can clearly see here, and it also worked really well for any kind of family gathering. Before we get to what a spam tater tot hot dish is, it may help to know what a regular hot dish is as well. The term pretty much came to be exclusively associated with Minnesota in the early 20th century, but later on it branched on to encompass most of the upper Midwest too. It was a type of casserole that usually had three things going on, with a pretty crunchy tater tot topping. What was this trio? Well, you usually had your potatoes, you had a cream soup or cheese, and some kind of protein. This was seen as one of the most effective meals for a few different reasons. First of all, it's got pretty much everything you would ever need or want in a dish, and that makes it really good for a lot of different reasons. It's got family potential, it's healthy, it can keep your fridge full and you even fuller for a few days, and it works with a lot of age ranges. Got kids anywhere between 5 and 17? I bet they'll work with this. Got adults looking for some hot and cozy comfort food? It'll scratch any itches they have too. Spam and sauerkraut skillet was a savory and simple comfort food that took the best of both foreign cuisines and local innovations in convenience food and made something special out of them. Sometimes I wonder where we as a country would be if Hormel didn't come up with it. I mean, what other product can you think of that works with tater tots and sauerkraut? That's enough range to give Ariana Grande a run for her money. Speaking of range though, this dish works well with either potatoes, onions, or any kind of herbs and aromatic blends. You can also cube the spam, slice it, or brown it in the skillet if you like a bit of a crispy exterior to go with your dish. The fermented flavors of the sauerkraut work really well, and lots of German communities were really fond of this dish. It was something that was definitely breaking away from tradition, sure, but it was also just so good and convenient. Adding a bit of fun to an old classic by taking advantage of the modern times is never a bad thing, right? If you want to talk about comfort food though, there's really no better thing to discuss than Spam mac and cheese bakes. Seriously, this reinvented mac and cheese is for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, nobody ever got tired of the old way of doing things or thought that it needed any changing or fixing, but they did wish that there were a few variants they could go for just to switch things up and keep it fresh. Plus, as time went on, kids started to have shorter attention spans, and that included how long they could stick to one kind of food. Recipes like Spam mac and cheese bakes basically kept propelling people forward towards convenience food because they started to really get on the bandwagon. If it could do this for such a staple of American culture, then what else could it do? People got to thinking. Also, it made adding protein to your mac and cheese a lot more affordable. Spam itself was so much easier to get than cuts of meat or ground beef, and a lot easier to work with since it came pre-packaged and ready. All you had to do was dice it up, cube it up, and put it in the casserole and have it bake. Then you were ready to go. It was the perfect thing to keep you warm on a cold winter night or whenever you had family over. The first part of the 20th century had gotten people really used to the idea of having soup for lunch, dinner, and just about everything else in between. It was pretty much all you had to work with, you know? A way to spice that up was adding some protein. But protein wasn't always something that was really available or affordable. Luckily, Spam and lentil stew changed that and showed a lot of people that having a rich stew wasn't something you needed to budget for. With Spam serving as the protein base for this broth, it had a savory edge to it that really just elevated the dish to a whole new level. Most people would just cut the Spam into cubes and let it absorb the flavors of the broth. Lentils were also something that Americans had acquired a taste for, thanks to how much they helped keep families full during the Depression. Having Spam serve as the stock for the broth and the base of the stew helped a lot in attracting people who weren't really too familiar or comfortable with soup yet. Lentil stew was always up there, and this dish gave it the kick it needed to keep up with the times, which were heavily dominated by things like cream of mushroom soups. Spam cornbread muffins were actually one of the first few things that showed people that just because it was Spam does not mean it had to be savory. Seriously, I like meat as much as the next guy. But sometimes you just need a rush of glucose, you know what I mean? That's also exactly what these cornbread muffins were. Now, a bit of context on cornbread. This thing was man's best friend next to dogs throughout the 1930s and the 1940s. It was some of the easiest stuff to get or afford, and you literally could not go a day without making some kind of corn-based dish that would help you last the awful economic circumstances back then. These cornbread muffins stuck around a lot longer than those times did, though, especially because of how affordable of a dish this was. It was hard to beat such a neat little muffin recipe, especially when it had something for everyone. If you liked things on the sweet side, you could customize it to get more of that flavor. Warm spices and sweeteners would work pretty well. If you liked your muffins on the savory side and wanted to taste more of the Spam, you could go for herb or spice blends that really accentuated that flavor. The possibilities were kind of endless, really. Next to corn and cornmeal, it was arguably potatoes that took center stage throughout the 20th century. That was a fact that even the sturdiest potato haters couldn't avoid once potato pancakes came around. And then it was only a matter of time before people started all the things they did to regular pancakes. You had potato pancakes with meat, and what's the best option for meat to go for according to this list? Spam. Spam potato pancakes were this super crispy dish that really just elevated the classic potato pancake and gave it a salty richness that it was really lacking before. I mean, you could have these as a main if you added enough Spam and made enough of them. It was also a wonderful way to switch up the regular breakfast routine into something that actually excited people for their 9 a.m. nutrition again. The batter wasn't even anything hard to make either. You grate the potatoes, put together the basic seasonings and the Spam, eggs, and flour, and then you are pretty much done for the day. Are you a fan of stroganoff? Wouldn't blame you. As far as beef dishes go, it's definitely up there. Still, sometimes it can be a pain preparing everything that you need for it. It's in times like that where Spam stroganoff kind of ends up saving your day, believe it or not. The main ingredient here acts as the perfect substitute for beef, and instead of it usually being tender beef, this time it's cubed or diced Spam that's been caramelized and browned. It helps since you get to experience a completely different side of stroganoff that you didn't have before. This time, you get a lot more umami notes out of the dish. Throw in some wild mushrooms, or some onions, garlic, and a generous bit of seasoning, and even the Russians would ask you for the recipe. The biggest draw for this recipe was that you didn't actually have to use expensive cuts of beef and extensive amounts of cream this time. Spam was infinitely more affordable than even the cheapest cuts of beef you could find, and I know that long-term customer discount comes in handy, but this time it wouldn't bridge the gap. Also, it was just really fun to make with your family since you could customize the stroganoff so much. Spam and shredded cabbage stir-fry is another pretty good classic that you would only get in the 20th century, really. Whether that's because people got so used to eating shredded cabbage during the Depression, the fact that people really got deep into the Asian food rabbit hole and kept trying new techniques and stir-fried variants of dishes, or whether it was yet another unexplainable trend, no one can tell you. What I can confirm for you, though, is that this was one of the best and healthiest things you could do, which is really something that people thought Americans could use a lot more of in their diet, you know? People often had been complaining about how the recent rise in fast food and convenient processed products meant that a lot of young children and adults were getting lazy, complacent, and fat, and just missing out on basic life skills. Not only was Spam and shredded cabbage stir-fry a good starting point into your healthy eating journey back then, but it was also a good way to get into cooking because of how accessible the recipe was. You basically needed little to no background skill to get to work on this. Let me dial it back to 1960 for you and take you through a stroll down memory lane. So, in this decade, there was a national explosion of interest in different cuisines. Hey, some people thought it was just very early-stage globalization effects kicking in. Others thought that Americans had finally met their match: boredom. They had simply become bored with what they had continued to eat for almost every day for the past, well, every year. Spam got adapted into risotto exactly because of this national interest, because one of the first places people looked to for inspiration was European cuisine, and specifically Italian culture. In the middle of the 20th century, people started to use Spam to make more and more flashy dishes that could really stun you. Adapting traditional European classics like risotto was really a good place to start with because it involved a lot of mushrooms, and it wasn't too hard to nail, despite what MasterChef may have led you to believe about risotto. It worked, since a lot of people were also hooked on creamy textured dishes by now, but unfortunately, people like vastly different kinds of risottos these days. Spam chili worked as the perfect thing to have in the middle of the 20th century, right after the Second World War. The rise of convenience foods pretty much meant that people had stuck to only that as their primary way of cooking. Spam chili was a beloved recipe up in the South, and in many places besides that as well. It was a wonderful way to take advantage of the dawn of processed and canned food. Most of the tomatoes, beans, and other ingredients people had begun to use were, after all, canned ingredients. This let people have a quick meal that they could rely on during a pretty busy time period, since this was right around when people were first starting to go back into the workforce. It was just really easy to make this. The chopped chili peppers were some of the nicest things that people had to eat, and it really helped in the winter seasons. Also, the addition of subcontinental spices like garam masala and turmeric meant that people had even more new ways of making chili that they could use for variety. Spam shepherd's pie was arguably the quintessential American comfort food back then. There simply just wasn't any beating this. Spam over the years started off as being just 30 cents, which was dirt cheap, but it barely doubled in value throughout, like, 3 decades more or less. In the 1970s, when casseroles and pies had really taken off again, Spam was just 50 cents. Shepherd's pie was made using beef and lamb, and I don't know if you know this, but lots of meat sellers who were known for fresh meats and good cuts of it were selling at inflated prices. This was all thanks to the shortages of meat that had overtaken the country thanks to how much of it was rationed and kept for soldiers. Shepherd's pie, at least the traditional version of it, became really unrealistic to make regularly. That was the biggest thing about Spam. It let you have everything you otherwise wouldn't make any room for in the budget because of how stupidly cheap it was. In regions like Hawaii and the Midwest, where shepherd's pie really thrived, this dish was a must-have. You know how I keep mentioning how popular Asian culture has gotten in America overall? A big part of that was local spins on popular dishes like Spam egg rolls. Most Chinese Americans considered egg rolls to be pretty much the standard dish to go for if you were looking to dip your toes into Asian cuisine. A lot of egg rolls typically were for around $1.50 or $2 per serving though, and that was largely because they used pork and chicken along with vegetables. The vegetables weren't really ever the problem, but sometimes the pork and chicken would be a bit more than you bargained for if you were making servings for a party. That's when Spam would come in handy. Spam egg rolls typically just cost under $10 if you were looking to serve an entire crowd. It was typical of parties in California and the West Coast to always have things like egg rolls at their parties and gatherings anyway. You could contribute it to the rise of bite-sized food or the finger food trends, but I think people just naturally started gravitating towards simpler and smaller portions, rather than massive ones. That's also a complete switch from what most preferences were like in the start of the 20th century, too. Speaking of rural areas and the Midwest, it was almost impossible to escape one thing if you ever visited those places during the 70s and 80s, and that was Spam and cheese bread loaves. These loaves followed the precedent that was started in the Depression of making your own bread at home, and a lot of people found their inner baker and bread maker with it, really. If you went to Hawaii, you would find that lots of people had Spam and cheese bread loaves for soups or just as a side that people could share whenever they had people over. The South and Midwest, on the other hand, were in love with one-pot dishes, and these bread loaves actually were just a pretty natural addition to the kind of stuff they were already eating. If you looked at rural communities, then they really benefited off of things like this because of how affordable and filling it was. Basically, there was something to gain from making a cheese bread loaf with Spam for everyone. Traditional bread loaves found it hard to compete, at least until the health consciousness hadn't set in and people were still going crazy on the dairy. Spam fried rice omelets were pretty much an Asian American special that had grown its influence in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. It led to a lot of people embracing these cuisines and what they had to offer and incorporating them into their breakfasts. From there on, it was just a short jaunt to Asian food, being an everyday staple of a lot of people's lives. The dish didn't last in the long run because eventually, lots of people had begun to experience issues of high blood pressure with Spam-related dishes, so people decided to just make their omelet the regular way. Plus, lots of people wanted to explore things like Thai and Vietnamese cuisines as well. Hey, you take Asian excellence and pair it up with American convenience, and the results might surprise you. They might surprise your doctor too, but at least you can't go home saying you didn't have a good meal. For what it was though, if you were able to eat this with some discipline and level-headedness and keep it to like a twice or thrice a week type meal, then it was actually one of the best omelets you could ever make for yourself or anyone, really. Spam and bean burritos were at the forefront of Tex-Mex cuisine and how it began to worm its way into home cooking and the daily diets of people. Actually, in practice, it was really similar to the way Asian food overtook so much of what people were eating back then. Spam and bean burritos fed into street food culture, though, and they were also a fantastic way of using some leftovers. Got flour you don't really need? Beans left over? Some cheese that's about to go bad? You know what to do. It was a great meal to make for friends as a casual lunch thing, or you could make sliders out of it and turn it into something for an entire party. You could throw in any kind of toppings and creams also and really just find your inner creative with this dish. It could be 4 people in one home, sharing 4 different kinds of burritos, and I think there's some real beauty in that. What about you? Would you be interested in a DIY Spam burrito party? It wasn't just good for home cooking either. Like I said, lots of people were getting back into the workforce for the first time in a while, and picking up a Spam bean burrito on the way to work from a local food truck is an experience a lot of people can appreciate if they grew up in the 20th century. Spam and grits casserole is a funny one. It's comfortable, and it's pretty good comfort at that. You'd really have to try hard to find something that nails that factor the way this does. The golden, bubbly casserole surface, the gooey, warm cheese, the tender and soft grits, and the Spam that contrasts so perfectly with all of it. Even just talking about it is enough to get you going. So the question really is, how did a dish like this fade into irrelevance and get benched for the rest of the century? The answer might surprise you, but it's just not good to have casseroles all the time. I can't explain how often people were having these. you had a casserole for everything. When people started complaining about the obvious downfalls associated with your health, they started making vegan casseroles. I mean, come on. I get that the entire idea of a one-pot meal was really helpful to home cooks, especially wives who were also working and then had to come back and contend with the appetite of 4 people in a home, but it did get too much at a certain point. That's also exactly why this dish couldn't last the long haul, and that says a lot because you can only imagine how bad things must have been getting if the South had to reconsider their diet for once. With everything in life, there's always the exception, then the rule. In this case, the exception would be Spam ratatouille, which is a deeply unusual dish. Spam is a processed meat, and ratatouille, well, ratatouille is a fine dining vegetable dish. I mean, maybe the fine dining part is stretching it, but that's definitely how it was in upscale French restaurants. The dish actually has a pretty middle-class and working-class association, though it was something people saw as extremely convenient and affordable. Spam, on the other hand, was something that completely broke away from the traditional methods of making ratatouille, and it was a dish that didn't really receive a lot of recognition. It could never break into the mainstream, and it died as a niche corner of Italian-American culinary exploration that just couldn't quite make the cut. Still, the fans were there, and they really swore by what Spam could do for this dish. Ratatouille was something that really started to grow in popularity from the 60s onwards because it fit most things Americans were looking for. It was sustainable, affordable, it was healthy, and it was all green. This was pretty much exactly what medical professionals, food analysts, and moms everywhere were saying was necessary for the diet of the average American youth. Now, adding Spam into that was really not the direction people wanted to move in. Despite what the 2007 Disney film would have you believe, though, there actually weren't that many barriers to ratatouille skills-wise, and the addition of canned vegetables and Spam only made that more true. Now, you didn't even have to dice the veggies up. Spam sushi was one of the first few instances of people spamifying Japanese-American traditional food, and it's actually a good example of the kind of stuff you would see in the 20th century, especially towards the tail end. Spam had become this really common thing by then, and it was something that people were typically expecting would be used in pretty much every dish. Sushi, unlike ratatouille, also did have a bit of a skill barrier to it. Spam musubi, on the other hand, made this dish something accessible that people could enjoy on the regular with their family. It was also a lot less expensive than usual sushi, and it would be served on top of rice with soy sauce or other kinds of Japanese glazes. Now, don't get me wrong, there were definitely purists who thought this was an awful affront to Japanese culture and tradition, and, I'll leave that debate to you guys in the comments. Sushi is pretty cultural food after all. It's just a bit sad that it couldn't last the long haul. Maybe that's because of how many sushi bars we have now and how popular sushi has become overall, but it's not something you see anymore. Spam musubi was also just this really nice intersection between Hawaiian, Japanese, and American cuisines, and it was rare to see a dish that pulled from so many different sources and actually managed to make something of it too. Spam and Leek quiche is another really nice fusion of French and American cuisine that first made its way into home tables and restaurants thanks to the rise of social media food trends. This was really something you would see in the early 2000s or the 1990s. More than anywhere else, it became something that let people feel like they were having a fancy dinner at home. Sometimes you want to take a shower, light a candle, put some jazz music on, dim the lights, and make a really nice meal for yourself. For days like that, a Spam and Leek quiche was the perfect thing. It was also just a lot more affordable than I'm making it sound. While it seemed and tasted fancy, thanks to quiche being relatively new to Americans at the time, it wasn't at all anything expensive. Actually, you could pretty much just be done with this dish in under $5, which I think personally was a big steal. It was also a chance for some home cooks to show off their baking skills, and whether they did that through making quiches for guests or parties or by posting about it, it got people into a hobby. And that was really important in a time where unwinding from busy workdays was a common issue for a lot of people. Plus, more and more people wanted to get into gourmet food and step away from the greasy, bloated, typical American fare they were used to, and Spam and Leek quiche were perfect for that. The Klondike Choco Taco is a one-of-a-kind ice cream treat shaped like a taco. This inventive dessert features a waffle cone shell filled with vanilla ice cream and fudge. Introduced in 1984 by the Jack and Jill Ice Cream Company, the Choco Taco gained popularity for its innovative design and delicious taste. The dessert was inspired by traditional Mexican tacos, blending the concept with the classic ice cream cone. The waffle shell provides a crispy contrast to the creamy ice cream, while the chocolate coating adds a layer of sweetness. The Choco Taco was made by folding a waffle into a taco shape, filling it with ice cream and fudge, then dipping it in chocolate and sprinkling it with peanuts. The Choco Taco was a favorite at ice cream trucks and convenience stores, enjoyed by kids and adults alike. So chicken paprikash is a Hungarian dish that sounds fancy, but is basically a party in a pot for your taste buds. Imagine juicy chicken pieces slow-cooked with tender onions in a creamy sauce, bursting with the warm, smoky flavor of paprika. It's served with a side of fluffy rice or noodles. Chicken paprikash really found its footing back when Chinese takeout wasn't as big of a thing. You know, back when Grandma used to put on the apron and cook for us? This dish really was the one-pot wonder. Bonus points. If your grandma used to whip this up for you, that nostalgia factor is real. A version of it still exists in Bulgarian cuisine in case you crave the it now. The Bulgarians are a little light on the paprika and center the dish on sautéed onions. Magic cookie bars got their start from an Eagle brand recipe in the 60s and caught everyone's attention with their awesome taste and texture game. Imagine a buttery graham cracker crust layered with sweetened condensed milk, then piled with chocolate chips, butterscotch chips, coconut, and nuts. It's a chewy, gooey slice of heaven. They were a cinch to whip up and didn't need much time in the oven, which made them a hit for busy bakers and holiday times. Interestingly, they also go by the name Hello Dolly bars in some regions, adding a bit of theatrical flair to their homey appeal. But as years passed and people started leaning towards fresher and less processed goodies, the craze for these bars kind of fizzled. Usually they were cut into squares or bars, rocking a no-fuss, rustic vibe that made them super easy to serve and enjoy. The mix of sweetened condensed milk with coconut and chocolate created a taste that screamed 1970s home baking. Okay, creamed spinach and pearl onions didn't look the most appetizing, but trust me, it was always a hit at family dinners. Think of a rich, creamy base packed with vibrant green spinach leaves. And let's not forget the star of the show, pearl onions, that added the perfect touch of sweetness. Not only was this dinner finger-licking delicious, but it was healthy too. Jam-packed with nutrients including vitamins A, C, and K, iron, folate, potassium, and a good amount of fiber. Just don't blame me if you get flashbacks to your school cafeteria. But hey, sometimes those cafeteria classics deserve a second chance, especially when they're this delicious and healthy all at the same time. Aunt Jemima frozen pancakes are frozen pancakes that offer a quick and convenient breakfast option, often paired with syrup or fruit. Introduced by Aunt Jemima in the 1970s, these fluffy pancakes were a staple for busy mornings or lazy weekends. Known for their pancake mixes, Aunt Jemima expanded their line to include frozen pancakes to cater to families on the go. The pancakes are made from a classic pancake batter and then frozen to preserve their freshness. They could be heated in the microwave or toaster and were often served with toppings like butter, syrup, or fruit. Aunt Jemima frozen pancakes were particularly popular for their light and fluffy texture, as well as their convenient preparation, making them a beloved breakfast choice that offered a comforting and delicious way to start the day. Flintstones push-up pops are frozen sherbet treats in a tube, featuring characters from the Flintstones on the packaging. These nostalgic treats were introduced in the 1990s by Nestlé, capturing the hearts of children with their fruity and creamy refreshment. The pops are pushed up from the bottom, offering a fun and interactive way to enjoy a cold treat. Flintstones push-up. Pops come in a variety of fruity flavors, such as orange, grape, and cherry, and they are made with a blend of sherbet and ice cream for a smooth and refreshing texture. The sherbet mixture provides a burst of flavor, while the ice cream base offers a creamy finish, creating a delightful contrast. Flintstones push-up pops were often enjoyed as an after-school snack or a summertime refreshment, making them a beloved part of many childhood memories. Now, Swiss steak is like a warm hug from the past. This dish is all about slow-cooked, fall-apart tender beef bathed in a tangy tomato sauce. Think slow cooker vibes, but way before slow cookers were even a thing. Now, the Swiss steak is all about patience. The longer you simmer the beef, the more melt-in-your-mouth delicious it becomes. It's also the perfect way to use up that tougher cut of meat you accidentally grabbed at the store. If you grew up thinking this dish was from Switzerland, as the name suggests, now would be a good time for me to tell you your whole life was a lie. This technique of cooking up tender meat came from England, so they're the ones to thank for this meaty goodness. I can just imagine the satisfying experience of cutting through that tender beef with minimal effort. Swiss steak, a dinnertime classic that deserves a comeback. Where do I sign the petition? Napoleons, or millefeuilles, are these fancy pastries with layers of puff pastry and pastry cream, all topped off with this slick glazed icing. Originating from France in the 18th century and known for their 1,000 leaves, that's what millefeuille means, these pastries were a big hit in fancy bakeries for their classy look and delicate flavors, perfect for high-end events and fine dining spots. Making them was no small feat, though, and as lighter, simpler desserts became more popular recently, Napoleons started showing up less often. Usually, these pastries were served up in tidy rectangles, with the icing artfully done up to make them total eye candy. The super precise layers and that creamy, flaky vibe are what made munching on a Napoleon feel like a luxury. Eggo Waf-Fulls are waffles filled with syrup or fruit filling, combining the convenience of a waffle with the indulgence of a filled pastry. These quick and easy breakfast items were introduced by Kellogg's in the early 2000s, offering a unique twist on the classic Eggo waffles. The waffles are made by pressing 2 waffle halves together with a sweet filling inside. Eggo Waf-Fulls come in a variety of flavors, including blueberry, strawberry, and maple syrup, providing a range of options to suit different tastes. The filled waffles are cooked until crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Eggo Waf-Fulls were often enjoyed as a quick and easy breakfast option, perfect for busy mornings or lazy weekends. Jell-O pudding pops are frozen pops made from Jell-O pudding, offering a creamy and smooth texture. These treats come in various flavors, including chocolate, vanilla, and swirl, and were a favorite among kids for their rich taste. Introduced by Jell-O in the 1970s, these pops became a popular frozen dessert option, combining the beloved flavors of Jell-O pudding with the refreshing qualities of a frozen treat. The pops are made by blending Jell-O pudding mix with milk and freezing the mixture into popsicle molds. The result is a creamy, icy pop that melts in your mouth, delivering a burst of flavor with every bite. The idea for these pops stemmed from the popularity of pudding as a comfort food, and Jell-O capitalized on this by creating a frozen version that was easy to enjoy on the go. These treats were also popular at birthday parties, where kids loved the creamy texture and delicious flavors. Lamb might seem like a fancy restaurant thing these days, but back in the day, it was a total dinnertime MVP. Lamb stew was a fan favorite at dinner parties back in the day, and I get the hype. Imagine the combination of melt-in-your-mouth lamb and an assortment of colorful vegetables like carrots, potatoes, and peas simmered in a rich, flavorful broth just begging to be soaked with some crusty bread. This is a dish that's guaranteed to warm you up from the inside out on a chilly day. Not to mention, it's surprisingly easy to make. Perfect for those nights when you want a delicious meal without spending hours in the kitchen. Just maybe don't tell your grandma you added a sprinkle of your favorite hot sauce. Some traditions are best left untouched. Down in Greensboro, North Carolina, Mrs. L.H. Wiggins came up with the Hummingbird cake, which Southern Living magazine made famous in '78. This cake's got it all: bananas, pineapple, pecans, cinnamon, and it's topped with a killer cream cheese frosting that ties all those spicy and fruity flavors together. It became a big deal fast, thanks to its unique taste combo and the fact that it was pretty easy to make for any kind of get-together. Over time, though, as dessert trends evolved and global flavors took the spotlight, the Hummingbird cake kind of drifted out of the mainstream. The cake is particularly beloved in the South, where it remains a celebrated part of regional culinary traditions. Typically, this cake was stacked up high in layers and generously slathered with frosting, making it a showstopper at parties. Kid Cuisine is a line of frozen meals for children, often featuring cartoon characters on the packaging. Introduced in 1989 by Conagra Foods, these meals provided a balanced, kid-friendly dinner with fun sides like corn or mac and cheese. The meals typically include an entree, a side, a dessert, and sometimes a small toy or game on the packaging, engaging children beyond just the meal. Kid Cuisine offers a variety of options, such as chicken nuggets, mini corn dogs, and pizza, appealing to children's tastes. Kid Cuisine meals are microwavable and easy to prepare, making them a convenient option for busy families. The inclusion of a dessert, such as a brownie or pudding, adds to the appeal of these meals. The variety of options also meant that there was something for every child's taste. Back in the 1950s, the Divan Parisian restaurant at Chatham Hotel in New York City gave birth to its signature dish, the chicken Divan casserole. This mouth-watering dish soon found its way to all our homes, and I'm not complaining. It's made of tender chicken pieces nestled amongst vibrant green broccoli florets in a rich and creamy sauce, topped with a generous layer of melty cheese and a sprinkle of crispy breadcrumbs. The chef who leaked this recipe out to the public really took one for the team, and we can never thank him enough. It's the perfect combination of protein, veggies, and all the cheesy goodness your heart desires. Just maybe pair it with a side salad to pretend you're being healthy. Chicken Divan casserole is the retro dish of every cheese lover's dreams, and you know what that calls for? A comeback. It's a classic at throwback parties, but you don't really need an excuse to cook this up. A typical Tuesday night works too. Magic Pan crepe cakes come from those Magic Pan restaurants that made crepe dishes a big deal back in the 60s and 70s. Here's how they do it. They layer up thin crepes with all sorts of fillings, from sweet creams and fruits to savory cheeses and spinach. Basic crepe batter is pretty simple, just flour, eggs, milk, and butter. But when you stack them up and fill them just right, it turns into something special. Each layer was carefully assembled to ensure the flavors melded beautifully, providing a gourmet experience that was rare at the time. These crepe cakes were a hit because you could watch them being made right in front of you, which was pretty cool back then. Though they were a favorite for a while, as the Magic Pan spots closed down and eating out got more casual, crepe cakes weren't as common. When they served them, it was always with style, dressed up with a little sauce or a sprinkle of powdered sugar to make them look as good as they tasted. Elio's pizza is a frozen pizza with a distinct rectangular shape known for its crispy crust and savory toppings. This convenient meal was introduced in 1963 by Elio's, becoming a staple for quick and easy dinners. The pizza was developed with the intention of providing a straightforward and reliable frozen meal option for families. The original recipe featured a crispy crust that provided a satisfying crunch, complemented by the tangy tomato sauce and melty cheese. Elio's pizza is typically cut into square slices, making it easy to share or customize with different toppings. The rectangular shape also made it easy to fit into toasters and ovens for quick reheating. Hungry Man dinners are hearty frozen meals designed for big appetites, often featuring meats like turkey or fried chicken with sides like mashed potatoes and corn. These early versions were introduced by Swanson in 1973, aiming to provide a larger portion size than traditional TV dinners. The meals were known for their generous portions and satisfying flavors, making them popular among those with hearty appetites. The original Hungry Man dinners offered a variety of entree options, including Salisbury steak, meatloaf, and pork chops, paired with classic comfort food sides like green beans, mac and cheese, and stuffing. The meals were cooked and served in aluminum trays, allowing for easy preparation and cleanup. The substantial portions and satisfying flavors made Hungry Man dinners a go-to choice for those seeking a comforting and filling meal. Snowball cakes are all about that winter vibe, with their fluffy marshmallow filling and a coating of shredded coconut that looks just like snow. Inside, there's a chocolate sponge cake that keeps everything rich and interesting. These treats got their name from their cool, snowball-like appearance, making them a hit during the holiday season. They used to be all over the place as pre-packaged snacks from brands like Hostess, known for their fun and distinctive look. But as people started choosing more natural and less processed options, Snowball cakes kind of faded out. They were usually wrapped up all neat, making them easy to grab and go. Scalloped chicken casserole. Here's another classic casserole that deserves a comeback. This dish is the perfect example of simple but mouth-watering good. I mean, just imagine tender chicken pieces in a creamy sauce, seasoned to perfection, and layered with fluffy breadcrumbs. I think I'm feeling hungry now. Scalloped chicken casserole is a great way to use up leftover chicken, and it's perfect for a quick and easy weeknight meal. Not to mention, it's a dish that's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Who can resist creamy chicken and crispy breadcrumbs? Ditch your takeout menus for a night and take a trip down memory lane by giving this casserole a try. You can find dozens of recipes on the internet, and it won't take you hours to whip up. Trust me, your taste buds will thank you. Flintstones push-up pops are frozen sherbet treats in a tube, featuring characters from the Flintstones on the packaging. These nostalgic treats were introduced in the 1990s by Nestlé, capturing the hearts of children with their fruity and creamy refreshment. The pops are pushed up from the bottom, offering a fun and interactive way to enjoy a cold treat. Flintstones push-up. Pops come in a variety of fruity flavors, such as orange, grape, and cherry, and they are made with a blend of sherbet and ice cream for a smooth and refreshing texture. The sherbet mixture provides a burst of flavor, while the ice cream base offers a creamy finish, creating a delightful contrast. Flintstones push-up pops were often enjoyed as an after-school snack or a summertime refreshment, making them a beloved part of many childhood memories. Mrs. Paul's fish sticks are frozen breaded fish sticks, often served with tartar sauce or ketchup. These crispy and mild-flavored seafood sticks were introduced by Mrs. Paul's in the 1940s and became a family favorite. The fish sticks are made from white fish, such as cod or pollock, which is breaded and fried to create a crunchy coating. The fish sticks could be baked or fried, allowing for versatility in preparation, and they were often served with sides like fries or coleslaw for a complete meal. Mrs. Paul's fish sticks were particularly popular among children, who enjoyed their mild flavor and crunchy texture. They were among the first frozen seafood products to gain widespread acceptance, thanks to their consistent quality and taste. Stuffed peppers. Forget those boring pre-made things you see at the grocery store because stuffed peppers are here to save the day. We're talking about the beautiful bell peppers Grandma made on Thanksgiving. Vibrant red, yellow, or orange peppers are hand-picked and carefully hollowed out and then stuffed with a flavorful mixture of fluffy rice, seasoned ground meat, and your choice of chopped vegetables. Once stuffed, these peppers are baked to perfection until they are tender and crisp. Now, this isn't just a casual meal. Whipping up a stuffed pepper might make you feel like a master chef in the kitchen. It's also a great way to use up leftover rice and ground meat. Bonus points. If you use their visual appeal to trick your children into getting their daily dose of veggies. Yeah, the little ones don't really go for the green peppers on the table, but they might just love these stuffed peppers. You might even add some cheese to top it off. Unfortunately, it is one of those dishes that has faded from many dinner tables. Poke cake hit the scene in the 70s and got everyone excited because you could do so much with it. After baking a simple vanilla or chocolate cake, you poke holes all over it and fill those up with Jell-O, pudding, or sweetened condensed milk. This trick lets the filling soak into the cake, making it super moist and adding layers of flavor. Jell-O pushed this idea big time, showing everyone how a plain cake could turn into a showstopper. It was a hit because you could tweak it with different fillings depending on what you were into. But as tastes got more sophisticated and folks leaned towards less sugary stuff, poke cake kind of lost its spotlight. It was usually served in a big dish, looking casual and family-friendly. You'd often see it with a fluffy layer of whipped cream on top, maybe some fruit or sprinkles too, just to make those flavors pop. Remember when your mom used to whip you up lunch for school along with a heartfelt note and a sweet treat? Meat and potato patties were a staple back in the day and a hit in the lunchbox. If you've got some leftover mashed potatoes lying around, you've got to try these. Yeah, these are basically patties made out of mashed potatoes combined with seasoned ground meat, shaped into little discs, and fried till golden brown. They pair perfectly with ketchup, your favorite dipping sauce, or even a dollop of sour cream for a tangy twist. Meat and potato patties are the ultimate finger food that is still a hit to this day. Well, with McDonald's French fries on the rise, these really don't make an appearance that often, but you can whip these patties up anytime. They're surprisingly easy to make. Just give your mom a call and ask for the recipe. Geno's pizza rolls are bite-sized turnovers filled with pizza ingredients, such as cheese, tomato sauce, and toppings. The original recipe, created by Geno Palucci in the late 1960s, was known for its distinct flavor and crispy texture. Palucci was inspired to create the rolls after noticing the popularity of frozen snacks, and his Italian heritage influenced the flavors. The rolls are made by wrapping a thin dough around a savory filling, then baking or frying until golden and crispy. The original recipe included a blend of cheeses, tomato sauce, and spices, creating a rich and satisfying taste. The rolls can be customized with various fillings such as pepperoni or sausage to suit different preferences. Geno's pizza rolls offer a quick and delicious way to enjoy pizza flavors in a portable format, making them a popular snack or party food. Hear me out, this one might sound a little boring at first glance, but trust me, it's a classic for a reason. The split pea soup is a hearty, filling, and surprisingly healthy-ish, thick, creamy soup packed with vibrant green split peas and other vegetables like carrots, celery, and onions. Now, on that healthy-ish claim, it depends on how much butter and cream your grandma used. The split pea soup is the kind of soup that leaves you feeling satisfied for hours. It has been a St. Patrick's Day staple ever since its origin in 1905. The best part? You can totally customize it according to your liking. Yeah, don't be shy to throw in your favorite veggies, add a splash of lemon juice for a bit of brightness, or even some leftover shredded chicken for an extra protein punch. We really need to bring this one back. Butterscotch brownies, or blondies, mix it up with brown sugar, butter, flour, eggs, and baking powder, all jazzed up with butterscotch chips. These goodies swapped out chocolate for a sweet caramel-like vibe and caught on fast. They were super easy to whip up, making them a go-to for anyone needing a quick dessert fix without the intense richness of chocolate. Their ease of preparation and ability to store well made them popular for potlucks, school functions, and holiday treat exchanges. Over time, though, as bakers got more into gourmet and unique flavors, blondies weren't the main event anymore. Usually, you'd find them cut into squares, laid out on a platter, perfect for grabbing a bite without any fuss. The combo of a chewy middle with a bit of crunch around the edges really made these stand out. Stauffer's Welsh Rarebit is a frozen version of the classic Welsh dish, consisting of a cheese sauce poured over toasted bread. This rich and savory dish was introduced by Stauffer's in the mid-20th century, providing a quick and indulgent meal option for cheese lovers. The dish is a take on a traditional Welsh recipe that dates back to the 18th century, known for its comforting blend of cheese and bread. It's made from a blend of cheese, butter, cream, and seasonings, creating a smooth and flavorful sauce that is poured over slices of toasted bread. The dish is typically prepared in the oven or microwave, allowing for easy preparation and serving. Stauffer's Welsh Rarebit is often enjoyed as a lunch or dinner entree, offering a comforting and hearty option that pairs well with a variety of sides, such as salad or vegetables. Fat Frog ice cream bars are whimsical green frog-shaped ice cream bars, typically lime-flavored with gumball eyes. These playful treats were introduced by HB Ice Cream in the 1980s and were popular for their fun appearance and refreshing taste. They were marketed as part of a range of animal-themed ice creams by HB, with other options including fish and dinosaurs. The bars are made from creamy lime-flavored ice cream and have 2 gumballs as eyes, which add a fun element for kids to enjoy. Fat Frog ice cream bars were often found in ice cream trucks and at convenience stores. These bars were enjoyed as a refreshing treat on summer days or as a playful snack at parties, providing a burst of citrus flavor and a smile for those who enjoyed them. Biscuits and sausage gravy. Okay. This southern staple might still be a thing in some parts of the country, but let's be real, biscuits and sausage gravy is definitely not dominating breakfast menus anymore. I I guess waffles are to blame for that. But this breakfast legend is the perfect combination of fluffy buttermilk biscuits so light and airy they practically melt in your mouth, along with a creamy sausage gravy, rich with savory sausage and speckled with black pepper. This is a breakfast, or hey, no judgment here, even a dinner combination that's pure comfort food heaven. From the perfect hangover cure to a delicious weekend treat, biscuits and sausage gravy satisfy all cravings. Just maybe lay off the white clothes while you're indulging. That sausage gravy can be a bit enthusiastic when it comes to staining. The tasty meat pie isn't your average store-bought pie. We're talking about a savory masterpiece filled with delicious goodness. This used to be a classic at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners back in the day before hash brown casseroles came to take the cake. But tasty meat pies had their own beauty. Imagine a flaky, golden brown crust with a filling of seasoned ground meat, chopped vegetables like carrots and peas, and a rich, flavorful gravy. The origins of the meat pie have been traced back to the Neolithic period, around 6000 BC. Yeah, even the Egyptians were a fan of this classic. It's perfect for a potluck, a family dinner, or even a cozy night in. The best part? Its portability. Just grab a slice and head out the door. It's the ultimate dinner on the go. Banquet fried chicken consists of frozen fried chicken pieces that offer a convenient and tasty meal option. Introduced in 1953 by Banquet Foods, banquet fried chicken quickly became a staple in American households, especially appreciated for its ability to provide a classic comfort food with minimal effort. The chicken is typically made from breaded and seasoned chicken parts, such as drumsticks, thighs, and breasts, which are then fried to a golden brown. Banquet fried chicken was often served with sides like mashed potatoes, green beans, or corn, creating a complete meal that was easy to prepare and enjoy. The convenience of frozen fried chicken made it an ideal choice for busy nights or casual gatherings, providing an easy meal that didn't skimp on flavor. The Watergate cake popping up in the 70s was all about riding the wave of the famous scandal it's named after. This pistachio-flavored cake, made with pistachio pudding mix, sports a funky green color and a nutty taste, lightened up with some club soda. It's usually decked out with a frosting that's also got pudding in it and sprinkled with pecans, making for a pretty unique look and texture. The whole novelty of its theme and the connection to a wild moment in politics helped make it a hit. But as people started digging more natural and less artificially flavored sweets, its star faded. Watergate cake was typically a sheet cake, super easy to slice up for casual gatherings. Chicken fried steak. This classic is long gone but never forgotten. This one's pretty easy to make too. All you need is a chicken steak dredged in a seasoned flour mixture, dipped in a wet batter, and finally coated in a crispy breading. Fry till it's golden brown for the perfect dinner that'll leave you wanting more. Chicken fried steak is typically served with a creamy gravy for dipping, along with mashed potatoes and vegetables for a complete and oh-so-satisfying meal. It is basically American, and the yassified version of the Austrian dish Wiener Schnitzel, and the Italian dish cotoletta alla Milanese. Fancy names, but the same old fried chicken steak. Now I know what you're thinking. Why did this crispy golden goodness leave us too soon? Well, you can trick yourself all you want, but it's not the healthiest dinner out there. But hey, having a fried steak once in a while can't do much harm, right? Just be prepared for some finger-licking good action. This dish is messy, but in the best way possible. Morton pot pies are frozen pot pies with flaky crusts and savory fillings, such as chicken or beef with vegetables. These classic comfort foods were introduced by Morton Frozen Foods in the 1940s, offering a hearty meal in a single dish. The pies feature a golden, buttery crust that encases a rich and flavorful filling. Morton pot pies were particularly popular for their convenience and taste, providing a meal that could be enjoyed at home or on the go. The pies were traditionally baked in the oven, allowing the crust to become crispy and golden, while the filling remained hot and savory. Morton pot pies were often enjoyed as a comforting dinner or a quick lunch, offering a delicious and filling option for any time of day. Funny Feet ice cream is an ice cream treat shaped like a foot, typically strawberry flavored with a bubblegum toe. This quirky dessert was introduced in the 1980s by Walls, capturing the imagination of children with its unusual shape and playful presentation. Walls strategically positioned this product during a time when novelty ice creams were becoming increasingly popular, aiming to capture a significant share of the market with its innovative design. The ice cream is made from creamy, strawberry-flavored ice cream, molded into the shape of a foot, and topped with a small piece of bubble gum as the big toe. Funny feat. Ice cream was often enjoyed as a summertime snack or a special treat, providing a playful and refreshing way to cool down. That wraps up my list of spam chronicles that are long forgotten. Which recipe stood out to you the most? Comment down below and don't forget to like and subscribe.